The Elden Ring Nightreign drops are coming in hot and heavy, and this time we have some new info on the random world changes. And this new info both provides glimpses into completely new events, as well as gives further context into things we already have seen in past trailers. It also outlines what will not change at all from run to run, which might be the first thing that has come out recently that could be problematic. So let's jump in and try and make sense of it all. So IGN's newest info drop starts out with what does not change from session to session. And I'll be honest, it doesn't have me too excited. So the things that will not change are the shape of Limveld as a whole, major geographical features such as cliffs, rivers, and lakes, the locations of sites of grace, Everjails, cave entrances and exits, spirit springs, the spectral hawks, and the big castle in the middle of the map. And honestly, that's a lot. More than I was expecting to be static and unchanging. And this could be a big problem, which I will get into a little later. But for now, let's keep going over the new info. So the good news is that everything else besides what I've already went over and the Nightlord you're hunting will be random. So that includes gear, mini-bosses, enemies, even the main bosses at the end of days 1 and 2. So at least every run will look different in terms of what you're up against and the equipment available for issuing certificates of clappage. However, it gets bigger and even better from there. So there are two major events that can take place in a run that will change the environment in a bigger way. The first that they went over is called Shifting Earth. In the example they showed, it was subtitled The Crater. So this would seem to indicate that there are several versions of Shifting Earth, and the crater is merely one of multiple. Now before we dive into what happens in the crater, I want to draw your attention to some huge info that you probably missed. Take a look at the left side of the screen. Here we can clearly see the names of the Nightlords, including ones that have not yet been announced. Now one thing that might confuse you is that each Nightlord has like a title that differs from their name in the game. So Trisfalos at the top is actually Gladius, the first Nightlord that everyone fought in the playtest. You can also see that the boss that is selected is called Equilibrius, which is actually the boss that they just revealed called Libra, Creature of Night. So judging by the other names, I would say that the Gaping Jaw is probably the dragon type boss that we have seen in recent trailers, and maybe the Centaur boss is the Dark Drift Knight, but the rest of them are unknown. But there is another big thing that we can gather from this shot. Notice there are only 7 Nightlords when we know there are going to be 8 in total. So in my last video going over the new story info, I mentioned an old interview with Ishizaki and IGN, where he was asked about whether there would be an ultimate boss that is the source of the events in the game. This is what he said. Yes, there is a final boss at the end of it, and they do have some sort of connection to the Night Tide and the encroaching night. So we hope players look forward to discovering that. So this shot seems to confirm that the final boss is one of the 8, not in addition to the 8. Which kinda sucks. I was really hoping for a 9th surprise boss, but it is what it is. But let's get back to the crater gameplay and talk about what's going on. So first off, the crater seems to be the same area that they showed off a couple weeks ago in the overview trailer. We can see the same types of enemies from the trailer are present, as well as a gargoyle, and then culminating in a magma worm fight. Now a couple of important things the narrator pointed out was that you should head there as early as you can because it takes a while to get in and out. And with the encroaching night tide, things can get hairy trying to make your way out under time constraints. Which tells me that this event must be pretty large in scale if you have to worry about the time it takes to get in and out. And that is awesome to hear. But the other big thing is that the reward for completing this area is a weapon upgrade that instantly maxes out your weapon's level, which is well worth the effort. For as big and time consuming as this area seems to be, I'm really glad that they are giving out a decent reward to incentivize attempting to tackle it in a run. But he also stated that defeating the boss also yields a reward in and of itself. Now, they didn't show that reward in the video, but it could actually end up being something that you do not want to skip at all, which is exactly what these types of areas will need in order for players to actually spend the time to attempt them. Now, the next type of event that was talked about was random sort of minor events. Things like Margit invasions and, judging by the video, whatever comes down as a result of the meteor strike. But the big one that also answered some questions from a previous trailer was this tornado type thing in the sky, which we also saw in this clip from the overview trailer. And we now know that it seems to be an invasion by a group of Nightfarer NPCs that will attempt to end your run. Now, one of the questions I have is if there will only be one invader for solo runs, or if they are just going to say get good and move on. I guess we'll have to wait and see about that. But we do see in this clip that the NPCs do not have to match your team's characters. We see that this team is comprised of the Duchess, Iron Eye, and Raider, and they are fighting Wilder and the Recluse. But here is the most terrifying reveal that we have gotten so far. In the video, he talks about a mysterious boss that randomly appeared and, as he puts it, would attack from miles away with level-sapping bugs. That's right, every time you are hit by this boss's insect mortar, your character loses a level. And the only way to get these levels back is by following the mist-looking substance in the sky that for some reason he calls the bugs, and then kill the boss. Now, if you don't know, levels are a huge deal in this game. Level up fast enough and you have a really good shot at success as long as you play it smart. Conversely, if you underlevel, your destruction is almost sure to ensue. So a boss that can steal levels from you and your team is probably the worst thing you could hope for in this game. And the fact that it has a very long range means that you may not be able to avoid having to fight it. Now, there is one more detail that you may have missed in this section. So during the portion where he is talking about trying to get to this boss and being stopped by the night tide, it would seem that they got close enough to actually start the boss fight, because you see a health bar pop up at the bottom of the screen. Now pay close attention to the boss's name. This is the same name as one of the Nightlords we saw listed in the shot we went over before. So this further supports my theory that we will encounter Nightlords that have been previously defeated out in the world. At least it seems like that to me. But I'm open to any other theories you may have on this or anything else, so be sure to leave them in the comments. Now, aside from these events, there are still more that we haven't even seen yet, or we have seen but don't know much about, like the Madness Eye, the Rot Forest, or even these floating blue balls. But another little interesting tidbit that we learned was that if you don't want to deal with the shifting earth events, you can actually use the bed in the round table hold to rest until it goes away. So this means that these events are probably timed, which on the other side of the spectrum, if you're excited for these events like myself, then you're probably going to want to jump into them as soon as you can, as we don't really know how long they will last. Also, 2 more bosses are now confirmed. The Bell-Bearing Hunter, seen in this shot here, and the Battlefield Commander, shown here, are both going to be encounterable bosses in Nightreign. Now, at the start of the video, I mentioned how the elements we learned would be unchanging could be a big problem, and here's why. Nightreign is a ton of fun that is sure to surprise first-time players and even some of the skeptics out there. But its Achilles heel is going to be repetitive gameplay. After you get in, find the routes that work, and know where to go, it starts to feel kinda stale. Not super fast, and during my time in the playtest, I wouldn't say that I really got to that point, but I could definitely see how it would begin to creep in on you after several weeks playing the game. Now, all of these random events will help a lot, but hearing that the overall structure of the map will remain the same is honestly a bit of a letdown, and could lead to players falling off in the months after release. I was really hoping for world changes that would cause things to feel unknown and unpredictable, and we'll be getting a little of that, but I fear it won't be enough. Regardless, I remain optimistic and super hyped to play the full game, and at the end of the day, I do trust FromSoft to deliver bangers like they always seem to do. I mean, after all, their track record is impeccable. Elden Ring, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2,